Are you looking for some real pro advice to help you start or accelerate a career in sport? If so, you're in the right place. My name is Joao Frigerio. I'm the founder and CEO of iWorkinSport, and I'd like to invite you to watch this first episode of a brand new podcast series called Meet the Recruiter. The goal of this series is for you to understand better what's in the recruiter's head when they're looking to recruit new talent, so that you can take advantage and advance in the recruitment process. If you already have a job, this podcast is also worthwhile, as the recruiters will share plenty of advice that will help you climb that career ladder. My guest today is Robert Wispelweij, a real expert when it comes to recruiting talent, HR, and workforce operations, with a career that spanned through the likes of UEFA, FIFA, and others. In this episode, Robert talks about the importance of networking, that's even before you actually feel like you need to network. He gives some pro tips to make your CV stand out, and also talks about the real value of formal education. If you like this type of content, don't forget to please hit that like button. That really helps the channel. Also, if you don't want to miss other episodes like this one, or just the shorter highlights, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get the notifications when we publish new videos. Just before we go to the video, let me remind you that you can now register to the iWorkinSport job fair, which will happen in Lausanne, Switzerland on June 5th. That's the place where you can meet recruiters from several top sports organizations face to face, including having actual job interviews. For more information, go to iWorkinSport.com/job fair. We Work in Sport community members have discounts for the job fair and other events. If you'd like to join for free, go to weworkinsport.com. That's it. Let's go to the interview. Robert, thank you so much for being here. You're the first one that I'm interviewing for the series. We'll call that Meet the Recruiter, a new series by iWorkinSport. And yeah, the idea is really to provide some advice for people that are entering or progressing their career in sports, right? So I'll be talking to professionals like yourself that are very experienced in finding talent, but then once they are hired as well, working with them and helping in the progression of their careers. I think that the first thing that I would like to ask you, right from the start is, so what advice do you normally give to someone who would like to have a career in sport but don't know even where to start?
Yeah. So good question. I speak a lot of people in that situation. Well, the first thing is indeed do apply. So don't think I don't stand a chance. I will never get a job within a sport federation, within a commercial entity, whatever, because there are so many people that apply for one position. In FIFA, UEFA, it can be hundreds of people for one position. I think some of the bigger suppliers and bigger names in sport, it's probably the same. Anyway, first tip is continue applying, because otherwise you're sure you will not get it. So that's the very first one.
Let me ask you, if I may interrupt, just on that point specifically, because sometimes I heard actually the opposite as well. Say, only apply if you're kind of sure that that's a very good fit for you, because perhaps it could harm, your application. So I think personally, if you're there and you start noticing that you're getting applications from the same person to different roles,
Yep.
Sometimes it is, similar type of roles. Sometimes they're quite different. How do you view that? In your eyes, is that positive? Is that negative?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good point. When I say do apply, I had to actually add do apply to relevant positions, because, like you mentioned, people applying from HR to finance to sales to marketing. Anyway, do give the impression that they are very motivated and want to work for you as an organization, as a company, as a federation, but they do not necessarily know what they actually want and where their strong skills actually are. So it needs to be relevant to your profile and to your experiences and education up till that moment.
But I think I interrupted you. You were saying that you're really encouraging people to apply, not to be discouraged to apply.
Yeah. So then for those more generic positions, it doesn't matter if you are in transportation or in ticketing or in accreditation, because the skills are not the skills required necessary to do good in those roles are not that different, because it's based on soft skills mostly. And then you have this 20%, yes, a finance person. It does help if you have worked in finance before. Doesn't need to be the sport industry, but it does help. Sales, it does help if you have sold sales packages already for sport events before. So in that 20% of the more corporate roles, obviously their experience and education does matter, and you should not apply to just any position because you want to enter the company.
And for people that don't have a specific experience in sport, a lot of the, even for very entry level type of positions, they always kind of require some sort of experience. If you don't have it, how would you suggest that people actually enter and really start getting their first job in sport?
Yeah, so it's also a bit the open door again. It's, for example, volunteer work. It's good to put that on your CV. Like I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of volunteers,
volunteering,
projects. That does give a good idea to the recruiter that you're really motivated, and that can be football coach at the local football club. It doesn't need to be necessarily broadcasting services at the Euro. Yes, of course, that helps if you want to build your career in broadcasting at sport events. But it really starts at the local level, around the corner at your local sports club, whatever that is. Or if there's a marathon in your country organized, go and volunteer there. That already does help. One of our search criteria, we still look at profiles and CVs ourselves. You look for, do I see somewhere Olympics, Euro, or FIFA World Cup? And you shouldn't put it on top, and I have worked for FIFA, if you have been a volunteer at one of the events. But if it's already there, it does give the impression, at least, that person is really motivated. So volunteering is one option. Well, and obviously sport education in general, without naming specific schools, that also does help, and it helps because of the network that often is provided by going to those kind of institutions. And it does help because students from those schools have generally a good idea of the whole environment, how federations work together with broadcasters, the whole infrastructure around a sport event. It's good to have that understanding, and if you see that somebody has spent 1 year or a couple of years in sport education, again, it helps to show the motivation that somebody has to enter the industry. It doesn't mean having done volunteering work, having done a sports study, that you start as the vice president of operations at any organization, I think the experience is just as experience outside, but building the experience within an organization is just as important. So it's not necessarily starting at the bottom, at the assistant level, and then becoming a coordinator and a manager and upwards. No, that depends very much on the level of your career where you are. But having done a sport education doesn't mean that you start immediately at the top. You need to build that experience either outside or within the organization as well.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about education later on. But especially about this, either starting a career, say in sport, or maybe transitioning. I think there's a few clear paths, right? You mentioned, volunteering or working with local clubs. Just, start doing something in the sports environment somehow. It will definitely, I think, give them points whenever, they're being assessed by a recruiter, right?
Yeah.
And then you also have those that you have a career elsewhere, like what you did, what you're doing, in the hotels. But then when you transfer to work in sport, was a similar type of role. So if you're doing communications somewhere, has nothing to do with sport, and then you want to do communications in sport, it's an easy transition. Legal as well. Sometimes, obviously have some sports can be a bit specific in legal, but if you're doing legal work somewhere else and you want to transfer to work in sport in the legal department, I think it's very straightforward. Or even other things, whatever it is, marketing, whatever that is. The difficulties sometimes come when you say you had the 10 years career doing something, say communications, or you were a journalist somehow. This is my own example when I left South Brazil to come to Europe. And then you actually want to do something else. And then you want actually to do some, operations or marketing and sales or something sort of different.
Mm-hmm.
How do you advise, that transition to be made? Education, I think, is one. That was the path that I chose, and I think worked well. We can talk more about that. But apart from it, because then you're someone that is maybe nearly 30 years old, that actually sometimes you're very happy to get an entry-level role, coordinator, sometimes internships or something like that. And then you may be a candidate that is viewed as, say, overqualified. Yeah. And how can someone navigate that?
Yeah, no, that is a tricky situation, to be honest, because like I mentioned before, we are scanning CVs still on FIFA, UEFA, Champions League, Olympics, obviously. So this person that you mentioned, per definition, doesn't have that, except for maybe having watched the FIFA World Cup final. But that is a difficult one. Well, you give already one important element: is this person is ready to take a step back. Yeah, you don't necessarily see that on a CV or on an application letter, but it is important that they don't keep in mind the same career trajectory, let's say. I have been a manager in an oil company, and now I want to be a director in a sport organization. That is an important element, also salary-wise. They might need to accept a cut. But like I mentioned, that is very difficult to put on a CV or in an application letter to jump out. And there, I think for those cases, the networking becomes the most important factor in finding then that position and make that transition. So yeah, although contrary to what I said before, applying also can mean go through networking events, places where the sport industry gathers. I work in sport. Talk to people in the industry. Invite them for a coffee, whatever. Try to explain your experiences so far and how they can be relevant for the organization in question. How you specifically would be a great candidate for a position to help them with a problem that they might have. And you just need.
This is a very good point.
With somebody than just through a letter. I think that is the best way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, the following question I had prepared for you was how important is networking in one's career development. I think you just answered that it's very, very important. And so I want to follow up on that and maybe ask you if you have any tips for some best practices of how people could do that networking.
Yeah, that one lesson that I personally learned is continue networking when you still have a job. So don't start networking when you start looking for a job, either because your studies have finished. Okay, now I start networking. No, you should, in my opinion, even if you are not looking for a job at all, develop that network as much as you can while still studying, while having your first job, while being at the end of your career or close to it at least. Take advantage of the fact that you are not necessarily desperate or at least looking for a job, and every contact is about landing your next opportunity. Then it sometimes becomes actually more difficult, the networking. When you are still studying, when you have a job, go out, be part of network clubs. There are many in sports that you can join. Talk to people, listen to people, very important as well. But do it when you're not in a situation where you are looking for your next challenge. And that is sometimes difficult for people because, once you're busy, once you're happy with the job that you are in, you forget about this part. I think it's super important to nurture that along your whole career.
That's great advice. I agree 100%. Specifically, let me ask you something else. Should candidates reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Or if so, how? I mean, do you?
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, a little bit following the principle that I just explained. Just reach out if you see your local football club is taken over by an American consortium, and you see they come to town and do a press conference explaining their project. Send the message, welcome to whatever city they are in. If there's anything I can do based locally, if there's anything, I'm a specialist in HR, in finance, in change management, whatever. If there's anything I can do for you from here, just do that. So yes, LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of it. And I have no problems myself, but receiving, but also sending out similar messages to people. I think that helps a lot.
And what about, because I mean, it was very clear when you said that we should be networking at all times, and I think that's definitely a good way, a good time to send recruiters, a message and establishing some contact, showing some value. But what about, and I was asked that question a few times. Position is opened at a company, they apply, there's hundreds of applications coming in, the recruiter, will see what comes from the tracking system and all that. But then they start getting messages from people that applied for that position. And what really prompted that contact was the application. Is it still, you think, a good tactic? Is it annoying? Would you think that could help? Would that hurt the candidates? What's your view on it?
Well, the contact with the recruiter, I don't think that helps a lot, because the recruiter, quite often, especially in bigger organizations, it's not the recruiter having the problem of a role not being filled. It's let's call it the manager, it's the functional area, the supervisor, the director, whatever title that person might hold. And I do think personally it's very important. Well, first of all, research the company, the organization that you are interested in. That's one thing. And if in that process you can figure out who is the person that actually has the problem of a position not being filled, or a task that is lying around, then I would strongly recommend to contact that person. You might not get an answer every time, or the person will not accept your connection or whatsoever. But if that person is really desperate, it might actually make him or her connect indeed with you and say to the recruiter, well, let's contact this person because he or she might have the solution for my problem, and we can go very quickly. So I think, well, it shows two things. It shows indeed the motivation and the understanding of the organization behind it, and it shows that you have a solution for a person. So they might actually pick that up. So I would be, and I have done that myself as well, contacting the person that you know can actually advance the process beyond the normal talent acquisition or recruitment process.
Right, that's very interesting to hear. Thank you. Let's get to that part of the CV. I mean, you probably are questioned about CV all the time. I am, and I don't feel I'm an expert in the CV at all, but I try to help whenever I can. So it's great to talk to an expert like yourself. So a few questions. Maybe we can start by, I don't know if you want to give what are some key elements you look for in a candidate's resume or CV, whenever they're applying, what are the main things that they need to pay attention to?
Yeah, like you said, I think nobody is actually an expert in CV writing. It's very dangerous to pretend that there is one template that is the winning CV template, and whenever you use that one, you will land your job. There are a few common known, I would say, elements that might make a slight difference. But at the end, if there is somebody in the audience that has sent a purple CV once and was invited for an interview, it doesn't mean that you should all send your purple CVs to everybody. It's very difficult to say. Anyway, what is good is to keep the format as simple as possible, in my opinion, meaning not too fancy pants columns and logos and formatting of your document, because first of all it quite often starts looking messy to the person that is actually looking at it. Plus, well, as also many people in the audience probably know, systems do actually, well, they can read obviously PDFs and whatever format, but a Word document is still the best transferred information into recruitment systems, so applicant tracking systems. And yeah, then it's a little bit grandfather is telling a story. But what I learned when we started implementing applicant tracking systems is people still are using the same CV for the many different roles, like we discussed before, in transportation, in accreditation, ticketing. I have one CV, I have one cover letter, sorry, and I might change the title in the cover letter, but for the rest, I keep everything the same. Even if I have created maybe in a system my profile, and I'm just applying to different positions. Like that didn't work 30 years ago when we were not talking about applicant tracking systems, because you had a person looking, let's say, at every CV, or at least until they had a small pile of CVs they were interested in. They were also looking for keywords relevant to that company, to the position even. Well, a computer is doing exactly that as well. In the beginning, it was just looking for matching words between the job description and the CV of a person. Now it's more sophisticated, the search, more conceptual as well. But the principle is still the same. If you don't adapt your CV, your cover letter, whatever you are sending to a company, to the role that is advertised, yeah, your chances go down quite quickly. We did tests when we had the recruitment system, and we were just when you copy the whole job description, you use everything, or the advertisement, you use everything that is there, you have 100% match. As soon as you start putting in your own content, that match goes down. A recruiter these days who is using such a system might only look at the top 20 percentage scored CVs or candidates, and then invite maybe 10 or contacts 10, or looks just at the CV of 20 and then reads the letter of the top 10 candidates. Anyway, if you are too much below, yes, you are lucky these days that at least the computer looked at it. So in that way, it's a fair treatment compared to the 25 years ago, where when the recruiter had their little pile of 20 relevant CVs, they didn't even look at the others anymore, or they might have looked but just scanned it. I think they did some research, and on average they looked 7 seconds at a CV. That's really not a lot, to be honest. Now, at least, all the CVs are treated in the same way. But yeah, candidates at any level of their career need to be conscious that if they don't change the content and adapt the content of their CV and letter to the job advertisement, to the organization, the lingo that they use on their website, especially if you go to IKEA, everybody knows IKEA, start your letter with "Hey, recruiter," or whatever Swedish you might know. It does actually help in building that connection. It shows that you did some research, and technically it actually helps you in being, well, not maybe on top of the pile, but at least a little bit higher on the pile. So that for me is super important.
Thank you, Robert. One question I get a lot about that, especially, has to do with structure of the CV. You know, sometimes it can be as simple as, oh, some people think that CV should have like 1 page, some that it could have 2, but not 10. So wanted to hear a bit from about that from you. But one specifically is, you know, I've been telling people for a few years now exactly what you said, that you must adapt your CV right to the role. So people would find it strange. What do you mean? Should I have 2 different CVs? I'm the only one person. And the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
You know, the whole thing, your story is on LinkedIn, so they can see, everything that you did. But when you're applying for a position, I think what they want to see in your CV is how your experience is relevant to the position they're recruiting. So everything else that is not relevant shouldn't even be there, right? This is what I heard from many recruiters. So far, so good. Is that correct?
No, that's very true. So yeah, I'm not saying you should have a CV for every position that you applied for. That's obviously a little bit exaggerated, because what I mentioned also before, you should be applying to a certain type of role and not just to every.
Okay. But my question is, there is, at some point there is someone who has either a long career, so has a lot of experience, or has done different things. They could feel they might be interested, say, in a coordinator position, so entry level, and they studied marketing, but they also have some experience working in events and is really into operations and like to be there, pitch side and all that. So two different roles to apply. One very operational, event delivery, something like it, but has studies and has worked in an agency before and could do marketing too. So the same guy has done two. When they're applying for a position, and say that I'm applying for the operations one, but my most recent position was actually the marketing one. Do I include it? Because in CV we say that it comes from the most recent to the oldest, right? So you kind of have the date, you kind of mention everything there. What's the advice to do that? Do you just include a line, but then it doesn't expand, and then you're going to expand at the second point because that's what you want to sell?
Yeah.
What advice would you give there?
Yeah, so what you could do there, in my opinion, I would not necessarily start flipping, like you said, the chronological order, starting with the most recent position. It is important because, in many cases, you are basically just looking at your last, so the top experience, because that gives you an idea what kind of level is that person currently working. Salary, even you could read a little bit from the title. Are you vice president or are you assistant coordinator, whatever? So you can get a lot of the last or the current position somebody is in. Now, your example, but I have done relevant, actually more relevant work before. What you could do is write in your heading, I'm an experienced operational pitch side camera person, now working in the gas and oil industry. Just that sentence, like a short summary as a bio almost. Then you have your gas and oil position, and then you have your broadcasting cameraman position experience. You could
very good. So you advise that CV should have a sort of opening statement.
That yes,
right.
And indeed, from a page's point of view, I agree with you. To maximum, I see a lot of, actually, which is a bit funny. If you are at a certain level, the CV actually becomes shorter and shorter. So for more the executive positions, you should try to fit it on one page, in my opinion. It's what you mentioned before. You come from the hotel industry. If I look at the total of my life or my career, it's actually it has been 5 years I worked in a hotel. It becomes, in a way, less and less relevant, and should I still mention it on my CV? Maybe even not. So the higher up, I think the CV should be more and more condensed to a bio, basically. Still, obviously, with the relevant experiences mentioned, but not that you have been independent freelancer for 1 year or whatever. That's not relevant at a certain level anymore. Whereas for a career starter, it's super important to mention, well, like I said, being a football coach, having organized a ski trip for your for your class at the university or something like that. 40 people, 2 weeks to the French Alps. That's sacré, the French would say, organization. If you want to work in accommodation or travel management at a sport organization, for example, at the coordinator level, yeah, that's a great experience to put on your CV. So, yeah, funny enough, I think at the start it's important to mention even the smallest experience in a relevant area, whereas the more senior you get, you should be able to condense it a little bit more.
Very good. Talking about cover letter, because you mentioned that before. So what's the importance of a cover letter today? I mean, I see some people, sometimes they kind of repeat what they have on their CV, is structured in a CV style. They kind of rewrite that in the cover letter. Is that what they should do? They should do it completely different. What's the purpose? And can you give some advice to someone to make it actually a good cover letter?
Yeah, so there, well, don't rewrite your CV. That really doesn't make any sense at all for me. Again, be conscious that the cover letter only, in many cases at least, bigger companies, only shows up once you have passed the CV selection criteria. So people have looked already at your CV before they potentially look at your cover letter as well. Yeah, and I think there it actually is the first possibility to show that you gain some specific knowledge about the problem that you are solving if you would be hired for that organization. So I think there you should actually try to show, well, that you know what you are applying for, that you potentially know what the issue is, where you would fit into the structure, and if you can, and quite often you get that from the job advertisement, tell the person reading the letter what your solution to the problem could be.
Very interesting.
Because that you can't do in your CV, because the CV per definition is retroactive. But the letter, you have the first possibility to do that and to show that.
Very good approach. So the CV is really about the candidates, about you're giving information about themselves, and the cover letter is really how you apply what you know to what you're applying, right? To the position, to the job. That's very useful. Very useful.
I'm really not a big fan to put that information on your CV. So I'm a highly motivated person looking for my next challenge in leadership or in finance or whatever. Well, first of all, who are you to judge yourself as a highly motivated, you can still say, but I'm a seasoned professional. No, so the letter you can actually say that, those kind of things. There you can really promote yourself, but not on the CV. So I would keep that separate and the CV relatively clean in that respect.
So just to wrap up the CV, because we talked about cover letter, and I'm going to ask you about some advice for interviews, which would be the next step. But you gave already one, I think, pro tip about CV, which is, maybe we already talked about a few others, but you mentioned about making the CV about the position that you're applying to and tailor your CV for it.
Yeah.
If I was going to ask you maybe for another two power tips to make the CV stand out, do you have two tips to give? Say you must do this and this.
Yeah, so for me, still keeping it simple. So from a formatting point of view, I mentioned already, but also content-wise. So less often is better, and that starts with the heading, with your name. I don't need to know your date of birth. I don't need to necessarily see your picture. Big discussion within the community. Well, in general, if a picture is necessary, yes or no. For me, keeping it clean, and maybe indeed your email address, your telephone number, and your LinkedIn profile link. That already does it from a header point of view. Don't make date of birth, nationality, work permit, all this stuff that can, like I mentioned also, some people look for 7 seconds at a CV and then take a decision to spend either more time or to drop the CV. If there's all this kind of information that is actually not relevant to the role, then that's a waste of that 1.5 second looking at it. So keep it very clean, and don't, when you put in experiences from before, put in logos and this kind of stuff, which quickly might make it messy. You might think that it looks impressive, but it becoming too messy. So clean formatting for me is super important. Yeah, and you mentioned the chronological order. I sometimes do see people mixing that up, and then your 7 seconds are taken by going to the bottom to find the actual current experience of a person or the last experience, and that does make sense to invest the most of the time when you make your CV in your current experience, if that is at whatever level. But there use a little bit more space, and the further you go down in time as well, don't overthink it. And one line, if you are an executive assistant, for example, the title already says it all. So you don't need 10 lines saying I booked travel, I booked accommodation, I booked meeting rooms. No, the fact that you are an executive assistant actually gives that already a little bit away. So yes, and in the current or the last experience, yes, invest there in making it as much as possible tailor-made and relevant. But the further you go down, keep it simple and clean.
Yeah, this is maybe the last point I wanted to make about CV, Robert, because you just said that maybe a thorough description of what the role was may not be that important. Sometimes, if it's you may have to explain, what you did, but I read and heard also from other people that more than describing what you did, they should or they must actually add information about the results that they achieved, because everything that you do, there are sort of KPIs or whatever. So
yeah,
you're talking about a booking, just describing, that you're supposed to book trips. It's obvious. Perhaps, I don't know, how were you measured? Was it by the number of bookings that you did, or what is it? And actually try to get those results there and actually get that type of data. Is it always important, or is it more important for some roles than others? For instance, if you're applying for a commercial position, then it may be important to say, how many sales you did, or how many you contributed to the revenues of the company. What would you say?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a mix, to be honest. Sometimes getting sales CVs in every company, they had a plus 5 million, 20 million, and you read through a sales report basically for me, it can go a little bit too much to the other side. So the example of the executive assistant, for example, if it's 20 flights for the CEO or 200 flights in a year, for me, that doesn't really make a big difference, to be honest. I understand that travel comes with the role, so fine. Sales, yes. HR budget for the FIFA World Cup, HR budget, again, 197 million. Is that all to the HR manager? So you can say, yes, I manage that budget, but not directly, and there were many different people involved. So mentioning it, it does give an indication of the importance of the role. In an interview, you would then start asking, okay, but what was your role in managing this budget? And then often it appears to be much smaller. But anyway, to make a long story short, yes, some key figures of showing your responsibility make sense, but don't make it your whole CV trying to show off how successful you were in earning money for the organization.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. That's very valuable. If we jump to the interview.
Well, I'm a big fan of not having fixed backgrounds, to be honest. So virtual backgrounds. So first of all, well, anyway, the preparation for an interview like we are having now, Joao, but also a job interview, obviously is important. Connection, lighting, sound. Check it in advance. If you get a link through a system that you don't have on your computer, install it in advance. Be on time, but be in a safe environment with not too much of a distraction or sound in the back. If you don't have that at home, go to a place, a co-working space where you can maybe sit in a phone booth or something like that. That the settings are important, not so much for the recruiter, but for yourself, that you are a little bit more relaxed, that you come across as prepared. And if you have a barking dog in the back, it's difficult to stay focused and come across as relaxed. So the setting, again, it sounds a little bit as but everybody knows. Still, there are a lot of people that do it last minute and try to do the interview from the train ride or whatever. So anyway, that for me is the first one. Then, like with the letter and the CV, the preparation. So know who you are talking to. It's so important to the quality of the conversation. And it quickly shows the preparation and the ambition of a person. If you notice as a recruiter that the person looked at the website, if there are tips on how to ace an interview on their website, the corporate website, read through it. Although you are a very experienced candidate and you had many different interviews, it's just good to show that you have studied the material that has been provided. And if it's an organization that doesn't have this on their website, try to figure it out, who is who within the organization. Maybe via you have a connection on LinkedIn and you can do some name dropping, but it at least shows your real interest for the organization. And then, the last, and I can give tons of tips, but for me, the last one is ask relevant questions. So there are not a lot of recruiters that don't ask at the end of the interview, do you have any questions? Don't come up with questions that anybody can come up with. What will I earn? How many holidays will I get? That will all come at a later stage. But during a first interview, come up with relevant questions about, again, maybe the problem that the organization is trying to solve with hiring you. So a question that shows interest and understanding of the position is for me super, super important. And you can prepare a few, maybe you will not use them at all. Can be, maybe everything was so clear and you react to something that has been explained to you. But in most of the cases, you can at least take one of those 3 questions that you have prepared because it has not been answered yet. But that for me is super important to close the conversation in a positive way, so that you as a recruiter also remember that person.
Right. And normally, I don't know, I haven't been at a job interview in a long time, but do companies still ask things like, what's your weakness? And then some people say that they're workaholic, or how do you see, or where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Are those, standard kind of questions are still in place, and people should prepare for those, or?
Worked my HR workforce hard there a little bit. Unfortunately, that still happens a lot. Which, like the salary question, quite often on creating your profile, you are also asked, what is your current salary? What is your expected salary? Whereas for me, that's completely, but that's more a personal opinion, I think, but also professional opinion. For me, that is completely irrelevant to know, because I know what I have in the budget for that specific position. And regardless
that was going to be my next question, right? Exactly. Why do companies ask for salary expectations? I know why. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, because in a way they want to cut people. So if they want to earn too much and I can't pay that, so I won't invite him to the interview, right? But in my view, if you want to cut the person, just tell him more or less what the range is, because if I want to earn 120 and you pay 80, I won't apply.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly the mechanisms. Luckily, there are some countries and some states in the US as well that make it actually obligatory to put at least salary ranges. If you apply at the United Nations, for example, well, you know exactly wherever you are based in the world, from Kigali to Amsterdam to Geneva, New York, you know exactly how much you will earn. For me, that is indeed something that any company, any organization should have on their recruitment portal as well, because exactly for the reason that you indicate, people that have different expectations, and sport, that is quite often the case. People applying at, the FIFAs and the UEFAs of this world expect that the salaries are there also quite enormous. They are good, I'm not saying that, but not as what people sometimes expect it to be. Yeah, mention that, so those people that have those expectations then don't apply anymore. So you actually raise the quality of your candidate pool by communicating it. Plus, indeed, you are looking as a recruiter for the perfect candidate for the role. And it's completely irrelevant what that person earned in the previous role. Plus, you never know if they tell the truth anyway. So it's a complete irrelevant question to me. But unfortunately, like what you said before, the question on strong points, weak points, they are still there. If a hiring manager looks on the internet, searches for what are good questions I can ask in my interview that I have in 10 minutes with a candidate, they fall on those kind of questions. And what I said before, for a candidate, be in a safe, quiet, relaxed environment. the same I would say to the hiring manager, which also often is not the case. They come badly prepared to an interview. They do it in between different meetings and so. No, they also should take the time to read properly through the candidate profile if it's prepared by the recruiter, CV, etc. And also sit down 10 minutes before to be on time, to be sure that they also can focus on the candidate. So it obviously goes from both ways.
And let me ask you something. Obviously, when we're talking about more senior positions, there's always, I think, room for negotiation in terms of compensations. If we're talking about a more entry level, say a coordinator role in a company, and then, you're a candidate, you receive the offer, normally, is the option of the candidate only say yes or no? Or there would be a room for, to try to negotiate compensation somehow? Maybe not salary, maybe in a different way. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so I would definitely, if there are things that you are not necessarily happy with, address it. It should never be a deal breaker that somebody brings up that they want to potentially work from home 1 day per week. If that is not provided as a standard, the company will then not say, well, we don't want to have that person anymore, because they have made the decision based on the candidate's profile. So they will say yes or no if it's not possible. So anyway, yes, I would always try, if you see something, if you think you will be underpaid. Basically, normally companies have brackets for positions, and those brackets, let's say, to simplify, have a minimum, a median, and a maximum. And they make an estimation based on your experience, on your education, your age, etc., where you fall on that, in that bracket. And what you can potentially discuss, negotiate, is exactly that. Yes, you say that I'm a junior, but actually I have done not only psychology but also economics, and I think that has a certain value as well. And then maybe you end up being in the medium category. So even on the salary, I would not shy away from it. You have a no, but maybe there's a yes, or maybe there is something on, if they have only a yearly salary revision and you are hired in June, you would maybe have to wait 1.5 years for the salary revision, but maybe they agree to say, well, although you are not a full year with the organization, we are going to revise your salary after 6 months. So this kind of flexibility companies quite often have and actually offer once an agreement is actually put up. So it's good to have those conditions per email or in a letter before, then it's easier to discuss. Once the agreement is put up, it sometimes becomes a little bit more of a burden also on the administration to renegotiate, because if the agreement is already signed by senior management or maybe even the executive leadership, going back after a negotiation with a new contract for the same person, it's sometimes a little bit more tricky. So if you are in the position to negotiate, it's quite often before the actual agreement is put up.
Right. Good advice. Let me ask you something more on the lines of industry trends, right? Everybody's talking about AI, the impact in technology in the world. How is technology impacting career opportunities in sport?
Yeah, that is actually a good question, Joao. I would like to say yes, obviously. The systems we are using to facilitate our life communication-wise on site, if I'm thinking about the operations, the apps that we can provide to our guests now, where they can see their tickets, itinerary, their extracurricular activities, let's say, so where it's going to dinner on the Eiffel Tower. Well, anyway, all those apps that facilitates the access, of course. So before you had these access devices, now it's mobile, it's a ring to pay extra expenditure. Anyway, that has changed quite significantly. Also, for our workforce itself, scheduling from paper to Excel. Now we have fancy pants scheduling systems for shift planning and so on. So yes, a lot. However, I do like to think, at least in the hospitality business, but in general, that the human element, I'm making up my thinking about it as I speak, but the human element is still very important and will remain super important over the coming decades, if not forever, because the atmosphere that you find going to the Olympics, experiencing it on site, the same for, well, you know better than anybody, going to a football match, FIFA World Cup, it's close to nothing else. So yes, the experience, obviously, online, digital, has changed with all the techniques about how many kilometers a player has run, and
No, I understand, but I'm trying to understand as well. We're also talking about the dangers of technology taking away jobs, or sometimes actually creating sort of new opportunities. So you've been recruiting and working with, for instance, events for a long time now. Is that anything that is already happening, that is evident to you that there was already a change, or is still something more for the future? I'll give you an example. You probably hire loads of drivers for events, to take dignitaries and whatever around. But we expect that perhaps, maybe 10, 15, 20 years will be a lot of automated driving. So we won't be hiring drivers anymore.
Yeah.
But you might be hiring something else that actually needs to deal with this sort of new technology. Mm-hmm. Is there, if you take 10 years back, for instance, when you were doing some World Cups or something, is there already a big change or not yet?
No. So that's where I wanted to go to. I even think that for the people that you mentioned, the high value individuals or dignitaries, I think actually having a human driver, being able. My very first big event was the Europa League final in Glasgow, 2006-7, I think it was. My drive from the airport to the hotel was, well, I still remember that because that volunteer driver was so enthusiastic about all the people that he had already had in his car, not necessarily talking about me, but he was talking to me about the people that he met, his city, bringing the Spanish teams to that final. I hope at least that element within our industry will stay here for a very, very long time. Well, what I mentioned earlier is, for example, a parking person with the signals putting people close to the car. Yeah, if you can somehow automate that, I would at least not put a volunteer there. I already took the option to put a paid staff member there. If we somehow could automate the parking system, that somebody would drive into a box and then the box moves to wherever and the car is gone and you don't need anybody anymore to park that. Yeah, those kind of roles to facilitate the operations. Yeah, maybe 10, 20 years. That's not necessary anymore. For now, I still see, when I go to a Super Bowl final, I still see a lot of our people managing the parking lots and making sure that, well, the cars that need to leave first can leave first, etc., etc. So yeah, it might be
things probably like ticketing or things like that. Probably those have changed sort of a lot, right? You have the paper allocation, you have to post them or something like that, and now everything goes via the phone. Probably, well, I imagine that we're kind of in the middle of that. It's really it's hard to understand what things will look like.
Yeah, but then still, if you look at, well, at least at the bigger sport events, you still have the outer perimeter, so the first security zone, where actually the first visual check often is done by a person. Yes, they might scan a barcode, but there are still a lot of stewards or security people or people standing there doing the first check. Yes, then you come at the gate and you scan again so that the gate opens, but there are people to resolve any issues and to do a control. Yeah, you can further automate it. Yes, but still the human interaction is still very important.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let me ask you, Robert, in terms of time, how are you? Because we're just reaching, it's 11:30 now, and I do have 2 or 3 questions more.
Yeah, well, shoot.
Yeah, I'm following what we discussed before. Great, so we continue.
Yes.
I want to talk about now something more related to career development, right? So maybe we discussed this already, but what then advice would you give to professionals in the sports industry to advance their career, say in their first 5 years? What do you think they should focus on? Okay, they get the first job in sport, how they can, what's the best way for them to advance their career there?
Yeah, I think there, well, that goes probably for every level, but especially probably that first couple of years is deliver. So do solve problems, solve issues for your manager, for other people in general, because that's first of all appreciated. That's quite often why you are hired in the role. What people that's probably a little bit further in the career of people, more relevant than in the beginning. Well, actually, when people just leave university or school, they also have heads full of IDs, which is great, and they are hired to have those IDs as well. But they are also hired to solve a problem, an issue that there is. And when they come with previous experiences or with a certain IDs in their heads, and the organization doesn't take that into consideration right away, they are basically not listening. You have a lot of people that can perfectly indicate what the problem is and who is not good and who is not doing their job and which system doesn't work, etc., etc. That's relatively easy for a lot of people. But what is important is that you need to solve problems. Need to do. If somebody comes to you with a question, with a problem, solve it for them, because that will be noticed. That will be noticed by your colleagues. It will be noticed by your bosses, and that's a very good way to become appreciated, but also to advance in a career. Be a problem solver.
Great.
Within your area of expertise, and don't start solving other people's problems that have nothing to do with you. Well, sometimes that might even help, but especially within the scope of your role, obviously.
Robert, after a couple of years, 2, 3, a bit more in a company, people start feeling that they deserve a promotion. And sometimes those come naturally, you don't even expect, and then they offer you a new job. But sometimes you feel like it's time for you to go to your boss and maybe ask for that promotion. Do you have any tip and advice on how one should do that?
Yeah, that's a difficult conversation to have once. Obviously, you have companies that have very, very clear processes in place where you have a yearly, appraisal conversation, or sometimes it's even monthly, where you have just half an hour with your boss and you can address also this kind of ambitions. In principle, I would say, well, if there is a process like that in place, stick to that process, because outside it's often difficult from an administrative point of view, or the boss will say, well, HR doesn't want to do that in March, but you have to wait until December. Well, stick to that process, but then once that moment comes, also do it and address it, and don't get frustrated that the boss doesn't come to you with a proposal, which indeed sometimes does happen, luckily. But if there is this ambition, or maybe even a slight frustration, then address it, and address it directly with your superior. And again, what is the most important thing? Become a problem solution person. That normally works the best in getting a promotion, I think. I mentioned also earlier the continuous learning element. If either in your free time, or if the company supports it, instead of getting a promotion, doing some additional education, get a day off per week or per month, to invest in your progression, in your education. It's not always just about money. It can also be different opportunities. And by doing that, maybe advance a little bit sooner in the future as well. So think a little bit outside of the box from just having a different title. Sometimes companies just give you then a different title, but the work actually doesn't change at all. That then doesn't make sense. Then you will quickly get frustrated again. So really try to fit it into a personal development plan. If it's not organized by the company, then try to have at least a personal one, where you might also come to the conclusion after a couple of years, the company is not delivering, is not helping me anymore, I need to move onwards. Can be the conclusion after a while.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you. One topic that we hear a lot about as well is work-life balance, right? And so sports obviously is a particular industry. I want to know if there's any specific challenges that you think are unique to the sports sector when it comes to work-life balance.
Yeah, so obviously for the operational roles, it's when you go, you are there 100% quite often. There are not a lot of roles in the industry that have this on a continuous basis there. And even if I think a FIFA World Cup and a UEFA Euro, even there is a cycle. So you have the build up towards match day, the busiest day, and then you have match day +1, so the day after, where there's still a lot to do, but the tension goes down. You might be able to sleep in a little bit, but because you can't often go home, you are in the hotel with the players, or you are in the staff hotel or whatever. You are away from your normal life, your family, potentially your children, etc. So it's exaggerated to say it's for 6 weeks in a row. It's 100% stress and no sleep and 24 hours days. No, that's not true. There is a cycle also on site, but you are fully dedicated to then that tournament, that activity, the Olympics during that period. So that makes it, you must like that, or you must at least accept that if you are in those kind of roles. It's compensated by being part of something great, and it's compensated by if you then go home. The next tournament games are a bit further away again, so you do have then a period where you work from the office, normal office time. You can take a break whenever you want, etc. Well, there's a bit of a period, debrief, etc., which is still quite busy. But then you often enter a little bit into a more quiet period where you can charge the batteries, you spend time with your family, work from home, potentially also a little bit more. So there you have a bigger cycle between on-site periods. I said also before, the flexibility, international, mobile. Not everybody likes that. Not everybody has the cultural flexibility as well to work in different cultures, different countries, different languages. I happen to like that. I moved within a certain area on this planet, but I like to move country. That you must have the support from your family, your relatives as well to have that. That's inherent a little bit to the business we are in, but that flexibility is super important.
Yeah, totally agree. So Robert, I'm going to go to the last one. We touched on the topic of education before.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'll also open to anything else that you would like to bring to our conversation, but some is what I was planning to ask you. So I wanted to go back to education. So you alluded to, I mean, the importance of a formal education, maybe to find a first job and to accelerate their career. I'd like to understand not only for the person, right, but with the eyes of the recruiter, right, how important is or it depends on the role perhaps, but when you're recruiting and you see that someone has invested maybe a year of their life in a master's program or something like it. It has, sometimes it's more important to you the brands of the course, you know the course well, or sometimes it's more important that you see that's someone that is committed and investing some money and time to progress in their career. They're investing in themselves. So maybe the program is less important, or it's a combination. How do a recruiter see that investment that someone does in education?
Yeah, I think I like the description when you say it can be an accelerator. I think that is really true. It does not replace the experience, at least for many positions. You just need experience in a certain area to understand how things work. So, but it can accelerate. And then I do think, does it matter which program, which university? No, not so much. I think, it does provide you already a network. So it often opens doors that stay closed for others. That's already a very important element. Plus, what companies, organizations, federations can profit from is indeed this bigger understanding of the sport industry. How do the different stakeholders interact? Those kind of knowledge, I think, is super important to get out of an education. You can learn it by doing, but it goes much faster if you do, for example, a sport MBA. So it's the context, it's the networking, it's the understanding of the industry that you take out of it. yeah, plus it does add to the motivation of a person if they are willing to invest, well, like you mentioned, a year of their lives, or also financially, move countries. Well, we just touched upon it. If people come from India to study sports in the US, or from whatever country to whatever country, it shows their dedication to making this step into the industry. And that is something very valuable for a recruiter and for an organization in general. So it also shows the motivation as potentially a first step, as we discussed before, or if it's somebody that had a career within a certain industry but wants to enter the sports industry, if they go through this trouble, it does show their motivation actually to really enter the industry. So that's very important as well.
Do you have any particular advice to someone that is looking at investing in education, whether it's a short time course or a longer, say, program, online or in person? If someone says, Robert, I'm looking at investing in some education to myself, do you have anything to recommend or to suggest? What would you say?
The in-person studies is from a networking, which I mentioned before, is one of, from my perspective, one of the three pillars. From a networking perspective, it's I think the best. Online, yes, it does provide you potentially the second pillar, the overview, the understanding of the industry. But from a networking perspective, the in-person education is clearly still, and I think also for the future, a very important one. Visiting sport organizations, football clubs, federations, with a group of students, and what I experience in any organization that I have been part of, they are also very welcomed, because it's also an opportunity for those organizations to talk about their passion, their work. So generally speaking, those groups of students are very welcomed in those organizations, and that can be super important for your career. So yeah, the in-person one, I think it shows the most of the motivation, the ambition, plus it gives you the network opportunities as well. Whereas online, that's a little bit less.
All right, Robert, thank you so much. That was great. One thing I forgot to say, and if there's people watching us until the end, whenever we're running this, I need to tell them a reminder and ask them to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if they like this. We'll be doing many others like that before, or sorry, after. And yeah, it was a pleasure, my friend. Great talking to you. I really appreciate the attention that you give to me personally, to iWorkinSport since 2017, since you were there the first time. Yep. So it's one of those things, right? That also sport. I'm really thankful to sport, is that this relationship that we're talking about, and help us create this type of thing. We do, obviously, it's a very sort of professional relationship that we have with, among ourselves and with our peers. But I really sense that I have a friend there on that side, and be sure that you also have a friend on this side of the screen. And I hope to see you soon again.
Yeah, much appreciated, Joao. Have a nice rest of the day. Thanks for this opportunity to speak about my life. And can only echo what you have just said. You have a friend here as well, and hope to meet up in person anytime soon, but at least Paris at the latest.
Definitely. Bye-bye, everyone.